The market doesn't know what keeps you up at night. It doesn't know when you want to retire, and it doesn't know how old you are. The simple truth is, the market doesn't care. But if you care, you've tuned into the right place. You're listening to Investor Resources, bringing clarity to the confusing world of finance. Here are your hosts of Investor Resources, Don Creech and Perry Sykes.
I'm Don Creech.
And I'm Perry Sykes, and welcome to the Investor Resources Podcast.
Well, it is times like these that try men's soul, or at least their commitment to their long-term investment program.
There you go.
Everybody's a long-term investor in a bull market. When periods of consolidation and testing come, it's surprising how many people say, well, I didn't really expect that to happen. Shouldn't we be doing something else? And it's time to consider, what else are you going to do? There are lots of things that cause concern all the time, but when prices are going up, it seems like they go up every other couple of days or at least every week they're higher. Your portfolio looks good. It's easy to go to sleep, go golfing, go boating, go hiking, and forget about the whole thing because your plan is working until times like these. And then you're not quite so sure. So we're on the verge of having a very difficult national conversation about multiple things that are going to impact the market. Inflation is sticky. Federal budget is out of control.
Still,
that's not new. Interest rates for mortgages are rising. They're back above 7%. I saw a projection that they go back to 8 or 9. You want to sell a house? You basically are looking for somebody with tons of cash because a lot of people just simply don't want to take out a new mortgage.
Not going to take the mortgage. Yep.
If you're buying a house, there's not a lot to choose from. These are times that try our financial plan. How about that for
There you go.
modification? So let's talk about the inflation scenario, because the assumption when we came into the beginning of the year was the Fed was going to cut interest rates 6 or 7 times. So almost every meeting they were going to cut rates because the economy was going to slow down and a recession was right around the corner.
And inflation had turned. We have it under control. Everything was getting better. All the inflation numbers were moderating, and it was just going to keep going that way. And you would hear the occasional person put their hand up and say, we've seen this before, and it doesn't always happen in a straight line, just the way markets don't go straight up. Inflation never goes straight down. And we're having a little bounce right now. We're having a significant little stall in inflation heading back to 2%, which we thought was going to be, that's going to be easy. It's just going to slip right back down there. Now the stickiness is showing that it's going to stay a little bit more. It's even spreading out to a few things that they weren't expecting inflation to get to. So it's not quite as easy as a slide back down as we were hoping for.
Well, the Fed looks at core inflation, which basically says they do not consider food or energy to be a problem.
Right.
Only if you have a household who take care of our food and energy, a problem.
Right. Only if you heat your household. Yeah.
Achieving the Fed's goal has nothing to do with how well you feel about your own personal financial condition. And so they're really stuck because the war in Israel, the Gaza-Israel war, and the war between Russia and Ukraine are complicating things from energy. We don't think about that in Ukraine, Russia and Ukraine, but that is a huge agricultural breadbasket for the world. There is just a ton of food supply that comes out of that area that's been disrupted. It hasn't been disrupted in terms of transportation, it's been disrupted in terms of they can't go out and farm. When you're in the middle of a war, you don't get to go out and plant and harvest. So we have food inflation, agricultural commodities are rising. These are significant problems that are not going to go away very rapidly. So one of the things that's really frustrating for the millennials and the Z generation is that they assumed that the government was right when they said, well, we'll do this, we'll raise interest rates and inflation will come down. Folks, the baby boomers who went through inflation in the 70s know that prices never return to their original point. They're
Correct.
elevated. They soften a bit, but getting back to 2% may be an unreasonable assumption. And if so, it's significantly detrimental for financing the uncontrolled spending at both the federal and state levels. And it's decimating the problem for pension plans. Pension plans benefit from higher interest rates, but inflation causes pensioners to say, that's not enough. You need to
I
raise
need
my
more.
benefit.
Yep.
And so we're going to have some very difficult situations to discuss about how these funding issues get worked out over the next couple of years. And what's going on in the media today is we've seen several weeks of, well, let's just say the market hasn't been rising for a couple of weeks, and some people are getting a little bit of angst over that issue. If you go to social media, you get these conversations about the next bear market. This is it. We're just with inflation, it's out of control. Look at what gold is doing. Gold is making all new all-time highs, which is about time.
Right.
It's been 13 years since gold had a new all-time high,
Hit a
and so
high. Yep.
that's a warning that the system is in serious trouble. So what do you do when you hear that kind of stuff? Because basically a lot of what you hear or see on social media is noise. It's marketing material to get you to buy somebody's newsletter for the secret answer to solve your financial angst.
And nothing sells better than bad news. So if you can get out there and say, hey, we've got a bear market just around the corner and it's going to be a doozy. It's going to be bad. It's going to be worse than anything you've ever seen before. Now you can get some subscribers. Now you'll get some people clicking on your website. That's what they're doing. They're just fishing for clicks. They're not really out there trying to give you any reasonable information or a reasonable look at the economy. They're trying to make sure they're trying to scare you and they're trying to convince you that they have the answer. And you can almost be guaranteed they don't because no one does.
Let's take a moment and take a look at a couple of stock charts.
Sure.
This one is the SPY, which is the S&P 500 exchange traded fund by the Spider Group. But it's clear here that the market has reached a top. It's kind of rolling over. It's settled over. It's coming back and looking for some support. What I've put on here are various bands of support. So when I mentioned a moment ago that there's a lot of social media hyping the next bear market, a bear market doesn't happen unless you've gone 20% below the all-time high, the recent high, which
Right.
from this point at the high to this red line, that's a 20% drop. And what I've illustrated here from a technical standpoint is there are multiple other levels of technical support where we would expect to see buyers coming in. We, in fact, have had some buyers coming in that made some rallies along the way. There's still increasing concerns, particularly with the Iranian attack uh, of Israel over the weekend,
Israel.
which was it was a failure. But then again, they told everybody in advance what was going on, and other surrounding countries, some of whom don't like the United States, also don't like Hamas. They shut down their airspace and they called the United States and said, "We're feeding you the flight paths for all this munitions coming into Israel, so you can get it before it gets there." And they got 99% of it before it got there. So there's Mideast cooperation to keep this from getting out of hand, which is one of the reasons why we aren't probably going to get a real bear market. We look at technology. One other thing. At the bottom here, we've got some squiggly lines for us who follow technical stuff. This red line basically means the current selling's not over, but it's not severe. There's certainly nothing here to suggest this is severe at the present time. And if we look at technology, which is the uh, triple QQQ, Invesco Trust on Technology, the chart's pretty similar. And this red line down at the bottom, that's a 20% drop. Well, we have to go a long ways down, and there's multiple areas of support here before that's likely to happen. These other areas of support are going to cause buy signals in algorithms, in pre-programmed buying activity. This is the odds of going all the way down to that red line are not very good.
Not
Can
good,
they
right? Not
happen?
right now.
Anything can happen because we don't know the
Yep.
future. But the fear that's being generated in the media is hype. They're trying to either sell advertising on the TV shows or they're trying to sell a newsletter. I mean,
Correct.
don't get
That's
sucked
right.
into that.
And
If
it's
you
important to
have
remember that these markets are supported by U.S. taxpayers who are out there in the economy spending. And when people are working, people are spending. And right now, almost everybody's working. That's really important to remember. It doesn't need to get a lot more complicated than that. Just remember 70% of GDP is consumer spending, and right now employment is high. People have been getting raises, and nobody likes the inflation. Nobody likes the way that's going, but we're out there spending like crazy still, and we're mostly fully employed. It's a startling position to be in for people to be talking about recessions are around the corner, bear markets around the corner, and the prime driver for the economy is just going strong right now. So there's some underpinnings that will support where we are and make it more difficult for something like a bear market to even occur.
one of the other bear market scare tactics is that the Fed may raise interest rates. Okay, well,
Yep,
the bottom line is nobody knows exactly what's going to happen, other than apparently President Biden, who says they will cut rates before by the end of the year.
right.
he,
If you believe that, yeah,
of course, he's highly believable. Um,
yeah,
but the if the Fed had to raise their rates, that would be a serious problem. The probability of it, I believe, is my personal opinion, is highly unlikely. And the reason why is because we have to fund a massive amount of spending at the government level. Just to stay even, Treasury has to put out tons of new debt. If the Fed raises rates, it exacerbates the interest payment obligation and means the Treasury has to issue even more debt to pay the interest. So if they raise rates above the current 5.5%, they will almost increase interest expense by 50% this year. We go from 1.2 to 1.8 trillion dollars, $6 to $8 trillion. It's a massive increase. That
right.
just means they have to issue more debt. So the Fed is going to opt to let us live. That's a benefit from their standpoint. So you're ready for the benefit? We get
Yeah.
higher inflation. We're going to be living with inflation in the 3 to 4% range, not 2% range, for an extended period of time until Congress gets spending under control, which also means there's going to be reduction in benefits somewhere, whether it's supporting underwater basket weaving programs or whatever they want to spend money on.
Whatever's on the top of the list, right?
There has to be cuts in order to bring the government spending back into a level that matches revenue. Revenue's higher. I mean, the tax cuts that Trump did actually increased revenue. The tax cuts benefited broad America. The political argument is it favored the wealthy, but the biggest benefit went to middle income America, and we are paying more taxes at lower rates. It's the same thing that John F. Kennedy learned when he cut tax rates under his presidency. It's what President Reagan learned when he cut taxes under his presidency. You cut taxes, people save more money, they get to keep it themselves, they will spend more money, they generate more jobs, they generate more actual revenue at a lower tax rate. When you confiscate rates, you create an anchor on your economy. It simply can't grow because government doesn't know what to do productively with our money.
True
So
enough.
you go to sleep tonight, quit worrying about the bear market, because right now the bull is maybe sleeping, but it's not dead.
And don't
Have,
forget, in times like this, when everything is so up in the air right now, just remember three things. No one knows what's going to happen. No one knows what's going to happen, including you, including us. Everyone's more prone to imagine the worst case scenario the more you think about it. So you're going to figure out how bad things could get. Most of those things won't happen. And even if you guess right about what's going to happen, you also have to guess how are the markets going to react before you can make a move. So be measured in what it is you're prepared to do with your portfolio. React more to what the market is doing, not what the headlines are saying. That's nowhere near as important as what the market is actually doing. So it's time to be a bit reserved. Always pay attention, but be measured in your responses.
so if you want some discussion on your own personal processes, we'd be glad to discuss what we do and how we do that. In fact, we had an in-depth presentation on that in our last webinar. If you go to our website and look for the video links and watch that, you'll get an education on one process. It's how we manage money. It's simply a function of responding to reality in the market instead of guessing about what we would hope happen. Thanks for being with us. Watch, subscribe below. Watch for our next podcast. Have a great day.